This is one of a series of Good Answers presentations, offering evidence to answer skeptical challenges to the Bible's accuracy. This talk I have called Dinosaurtists. Now, you and I know that that's not a word, but after seeing what this video presents, you may agree with me that it ought to be one. Before we begin, I must give proper credit to Vance Nelson, author of the Untold Secrets of Planet Earth series of volumes. I have drawn on a couple of his works in that series, chiefly Dire Dragons. I cannot express properly my gratitude to Mr. Nelson for his search throughout the world for material to produce these volumes. They are available from both Answers in Genesis and Amazon, and you would do well to add one or more of them to your library. Now, to dinosaurs. We have all been assured that dinosaurs are long gone, of course. If we look at a traditional chart of geological eras, dinos were supposed to have been kings of the earth in this period. Humans, as the chart shows, don't appear until very recently in geological terms. But the gap between the end of the dinosaurs and the emergence of hominids is some 63 million years. As one who enjoys old movies, then, I can take comfort from the fact that Raquel Welch, despite this film, was never in danger from dinos. Still, we have learned a lot about them recently. Our education began here. Quote, in 1676, a portion of the femur of a huge organism was first discovered by an English professor at Oxford University. During that time, scientists couldn't decide whether that fossil was from a reptile or other similar organism, and still could not believe how large it was. End quote. And it was quite a while before we gave these creatures a name. Dinosaur, from Greek, Deinos, terrible or awesome, and sauros, lizard. It was in 1841 that Sir Richard Owen coined the word. But we couldn't be certain what they actually looked like until about the 1960s. Forensic techniques, based on knowledge of how anatomy works, proved valuable for reconstructing, say, the appearance of a long-dead human victim when only the skull remained. And these techniques have helped us to put sinew, muscle, and skin on dinosaur bones. So, here is the history of our learning about dinosaurs. We had almost no fossils until the 1900s. We wouldn't have known what to call them, even if we had ample fossils. And we certainly didn't know how they looked, because we didn't have forensic expertise, and no human had ever seen one anyway. But here is a wild idea to consider. What if there were artist portrayals of them from long before 1700? Lots and lots of them. That might make us rethink the whole business. Well, stay with me while we roam the world. Peru. Long before the time of Christ, someone made this painting in a cave in Peru's rainforest. Plasma oxidation testing showed that the painting was done about 1300 BC. Plasma oxidation takes a tiny bit of the pigment and uses it for dating by carbon-14. If we take a close look, we can see some kind of animal surrounded by hunters. It has a long, curved neck, 4 short legs, and a long, muscular tail. Some would say it looks like a sauropod dinosaur, but it is clearly being attacked by humans, and there's supposed to be 63 million years between them. Utah. There's a petroglyph high on the rock here at Kachina Bridge, Natural Bridge National Monument in Utah. A petroglyph is an image made by scratching or chipping away at the rock's surface, and this one dates from before Columbus. Although you can't date petroglyphs with any precision, still, weathering makes it clear that it is older than the first appearance of Europeans in the American Southwest, and it may have been done by the Anasazi cliff dwellers, who disappeared around 1200 AD. Let's get a closer shot of it. Once again, an animal with a long neck, short, stumpy legs, and a huge tail. It bears a striking resemblance to Sinclair's motor oil logo. What had the artist who did this seen, I wonder? Since so much of this talk is drawn from Vance Nelson's work, we should meet him. He has degrees in both theology and biological science, and has traveled the world on his quest for artifacts like these. He did, however, set rigorous criteria for including items in his collection. First, they had to be genuinely ancient art, recognized by experts. Second, they had to be detailed enough to evaluate, like this cave painting. He included only artifacts similar to known dinosaur species, and there are about 200 species known. He also wanted species that had been forensically restored, as many have, so we could be sure of their appearance in life. Now it gets interesting. He employs an artist who has not seen the ancient artifact, and has that artist make a drawing of a particular species of dinosaur, positioned in the right way to compare it with the ancient piece of art, side by side. So, be aware that several images in this presentation are taken from Vance Nelson's Untold Secrets of Planet Earth, Dire Dragons, 2011. They are credited in this manner: Nelson, Dragons, and the page number of his book. We now visit Carlisle Cathedral, England, and the tomb of Bishop Richard Bell in the floor of the cathedral. Bell died in 1496, just 4 years after Columbus' first voyage. The cover on his tomb features brass carvings of animals. These are actual animals, easily identifiable, like this bird. There are no mythical ones, such as griffins or unicorns. But one scene is of 2 animals fighting. Even though it's been worn by foot traffic over the centuries, details are clear. They both have very long necks intertwined in combat, Their legs are jointed so as to point down, distinguishing them from aquatic creatures like crocodiles. Their long tails are prominent, and they have curved backs. Note the legs. Their knees flex forward, like human knees, and their elbows bend backward, also like ours. And here is something quite remarkable. This one has spikes on its tail. Are they similar to any known dinosaurs? Let's see. Here's the one on the right, and here is a reconstruction drawing of a volcanodon, which we are told went extinct 180 million years ago. How would that 15th century artist have known what it looked like? Now we see the animal on the left, and we compare it to a Dinosaurus. Look closely at that spiked tail. Until 1989, no dinosaur fossil had ever been found with a spiked tail. But the Dinosaurus had one. Another incredible achievement for that engraver in Carlisle Cathedral. Oh, if you visit the cathedral, good luck with getting the sexton to remove the carpet over this tomb. He's apparently been warned to watch out for dinosaur hunters. Now to France and the Château Royal du Bois, residence of Francois I in the 16th century. Like other nobles, he had his own coat of arms, and his emblem was a salamander. Here's one of that genus. Now, the choice of salamander as an emblem seems a little odd when we note what animals usually appear in heraldry: lions, leopards, eagles, bears, and sometimes mythical beasts like unicorns or manticores. But a small, semi-aquatic, slimy-looking critter to represent Francois? Still, that's what he said he wanted, and its likeness is everywhere in his palace. Here on the balcony, there are even 4 of them. He said they were salamanders, but were they? Try a closer look. The creature, as sculpted, has a long neck, while a salamander has almost none. Its legs are structured to point downward, while the salamanders point out. And the head, short and blunt in a salamander, is long and sharp in this animal. But if not a salamander, what is it? We see here a closer view of one of the many within the palace, and this one is breathing fire. Let's compare it to the prosauropod Plateosaurus, supposedly gone extinct 175 million years ago. Francois' artist either did a terrible job in portraying the salamander, a strange animal for heraldry anyway, or he had seen something that looked a lot like a Plateosaurus. Before we leave the palace, let's check out the tapestry in the Francois I wing. It is alive with color and populated with many images. But note this one. Seen up close, it is some kind of animal, all right. But what kind? Well, compare it with this reconstruction drawing of a young Myosaura pebolosaurus. Notice especially his legs and paws, the shape of his head, those tiny ears, and the scales along his curved back. The artist had to get that image from somewhere, didn't he? But he couldn't go back 65 million years to get it. Now for Germany and Rothenburg on the river Tauber. It is a picture-perfect village, suggesting something from a Disney movie, and in the town square is a column topped by a statue of St. George killing the dragon. The column and statue date from 1608. That scene is a very popular one, but the artist has to decide how to picture the dragon. What this artist did looks surprisingly like a Proterosuchus. When we notice these precise details, the creature has a prominent overbite, like Proterosuchus, and a curved snout that is furnished only with quite small teeth. There are scales along its spine, and its legs are designed to point down. All of these details match the Proterosuchus, which they say went extinct 250 million years ago. Also from Germany, an engraving in a book. The book is Livy's History of Rome, richly illustrated. The engravings were done for the 1505 German translation of Livy. And on this page, we find Marcus Regulus' men are locked in battle against a huge reptile. How did the engraver imagine the giant reptile from the story would appear? Presumably he had only his creative imagination to draw upon. Or did he? Compare his portrayal with Titanosaurus potens, which we know grew up to a length of 20 feet. Note his teeth, long in front, small in the back of his jaw. Note also the claws on his feet. Now, the artist couldn't have seen a Titanosaurus. They disappeared 251 million years ago. Or did they? For all such examples, it is important to put yourself in the place of the artist who created these works. If he was to portray a terrible beast, on what could he base the image? It could come wholly from his imagination, of course. But then the similarity, detail by detail, to specific dinosaur species seems impossible. And the only other explanation is that the artist saw the real thing, a living dinosaur. Change the scene to China. The Hongshan culture, which flourished around 2000 BC, is known for its fascination with animal figurines. They're always easy to identify, like these: a bunny, a bird, a turtle. But then there are a few like this jade carving. Not like any animal I've ever seen, but it bears some resemblance to this Protoceratops, extinct since about 75 million years ago. Still, its carapace is not very similar, and its tail is shorter. But forensic experts can also show us how a juvenile Protoceratops looked. And then we get a lot closer. The carapace and tail haven't grown much yet, just like those features on the Hongshan jade. Moving once more, this time to Paris. In the dawning of the Renaissance, the faithful who were wealthy enough would always have a belle roi book, like this one, done in 1409 for Prince John, Duc de Berry. These were prayer books structured around the prescribed hours for prayer and lavishly illustrated. One from this book is of St. George, again dispatching the dragon. It deserves a closer look. There's the beast, apparently accompanied by two of its young. The artist never got to see a reconstruction drawing of a Proterosaurus spenneri, but if he had, well, the shape of the head, the paws, the long tail, and spotted skin all would have looked very familiar to him. But then, Proterosaurus spenneri inhabited the Upper Permian and disappeared from the chain of life some 256 million years ago. Or did it? Well, we have traveled the world with Vance Nelson and encountered quite a few objects of art. All of them come from past centuries, as early as before the time of Christ, and as late as the 1600s. But all of them date from before anyone knew anything about dinosaurs. And yet, did humans ever see a dinosaur? If not, how do we explain sculpture, engravings, cave paintings, art objects, statuary, petroglyphs, tapestries, or illuminated books? It seems that the artists who created these works had to have seen living dinosaurs. And if they did, then I would argue that there are only two possible logical explanations. Either dinosaurs survived 63 million years longer than our charts say, and without leaving fossils from that period, or no millions of years were involved at all, just thousands or even hundreds of years. And if the latter is true, then the evolutionary time scale needs a drastic revision. For my part, I would say that that revision is long overdue. If you have questions or comments about this lecture, or any others in the Good Answers series, you may direct them to me, Dr. Jerry C. 4 at yahoo.com.